All right, everyone. Welcome to our Week 8 recap here at Southern Sports Gumbo. We're going to cover some winners, some losers, some spoilers tonight. So we're going to get things started on the winning side of things with Georgia Tech. Kevin, what do you think of that game?
Yeah, so I've got two winners for the weekend, and Georgia Tech is one of them. Going on the road to Duke, Georgia Tech is 7-0 now after pulling this game out today. It was a game that I felt like Georgia Tech would win. Felt like it'd be a tough, hard fought game, but they play well. They don't make mistakes, and again, that was the key in this game. No turnovers, 4 penalties for 17 yards. They just execute well. 6 out of 12 on third down conversions. Built an early lead and then held on, and just play the style that Georgia Tech plays. Haynes King had 205 yards passing and 120 yards rushing. Typical Haynes King game where he had over 300 yards. I like Pavia today. We'll talk about him later, but guy's just a winner. And a big win for Georgia Tech puts them in the driver's seat for the playoffs in the ACC and definitely in the conference championship. The games that they've got coming up, they host Syracuse, go on the road to NC State, who's 4-3. Go on the road to Boston College, who only has one win. Host Pitt, and that's the rest of their conference season. So they'll be favored in every one of those games. So they could be 11-0 when they play Georgia, and they host Georgia this year. So interesting thoughts there. So I'll go ahead and cover my second winner today, and then you guys can cover yours. And that would be Bama in the Bama Tennessee game. And again, Bama just keeps on winning the same way every week. Ty Simpson throws the ball well. And again, they don't make mistakes. And I would say their defense, while is not a dominant defense, they're very opportunistic. They get key stops, key turnovers. They were +9 in the turnover category coming into today. And let's see, I know they're going to win that turnover battle again in this game tonight. So let's see where that's at. We've got about 3 minutes to go. It's a 17-point game. So I guess it's technically not over, but it sure looks like they're going to win that game. Well, turnovers are 1-1, but it sure feels like when you count that safety, the way that play unfolded, that sure feels like a turnover to me. Anyhow, Bama, Georgia Tech are my two winners. Sweet, who do you have for your winners this weekend?
My winners this weekend was my first off was Louisville. Louisville played an unbelievable game in Miami last day. Jumped out to a 14-point lead. Brom knew they needed a quick start to take the crowd out of the game. Not that Miami has a lot of big crowds, but last night they showed up for the game because Miami's number 2 in the country. Miller Moss was fantastic. Controlled the game well, made some clutch throws, and they were just able to go down there and handle their business. Big win for the program, and it puts them squarely back in the hunt for a playoff spot and a spot in the conference championship game. So, hats off to them. And like we talked about all season, Cristobal's always going to drop a game that they're favored in, and everybody thinks he's going to get. There's the one. There may be another one coming. My second winner is Georgia. Ole Miss was ahead in the second half, and Georgia came back and did what Georgia does. I mean, the defense doesn't usually give up 35 a game, but they did what they had to do to win the game. Gunnar Stockton was fantastic today. Probably one of his better performances as a quarterback, if not his best performance so far. You know, it was always going to be a chore for Ole Miss to go into Athens and get out of there with a win, and they fought their butts off. Really, they played well, but at the end of the day, playing well is they're red ribbons don't get you anything. It's either a win or a loss, and Georgia won the game. Who do you got, DMAC?
Yeah, so the first winner of the day that I have is Texas A&M going on the road to Arkansas and getting a 45-42 win. This was the first game of a 3-game road stretch for them, and the offense looked phenomenal. Marcel Reed, 23 of 32 for 280 and 3 touchdowns, and then he added 55 more yards on the ground for another touchdown. So, they travel to LSU next week, so big game for them on the road. Man, I just love the way that Marcel Reed's playing football right now. He would be, in my opinion, a top 3 SEC quarterback at the moment. And he's doing it in a multitude of ways. He's throwing the ball super well right now. At one point in this game, he had completed 11 straight passes. And then with Le'Veon Moss being out, Reuben Owens really stepped up. 2 touchdowns, 69 yards on the ground. Another running back that's getting some run is E.J. Smith. He added 50 yards on the ground on 7 carries, averaging just over 7 yards a carry. Between 280 yards in the passing game and 217 on the ground. Really good showing for Texas A&M. But I want to give a little bit of credit to Arkansas too in this one. They kind of have a little more fight in them with Bobby Petrino as the interim coach. Taylon Green threw for 3 touchdowns and also ran for 2. So he had 5 total touchdowns and about 330 total yards today. So really, really good game from the Aggies, and then move over to my other winner of the day, and that's going to be the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. There is 1 minute left in this game, but the Irish are up 34-24. So I'm going to go ahead and call them a winner today. And it was a heavy dose of Jeremiah Love. 24 carries for 228 yards on the ground. They carved up this USC defense to the tune of 308 yards on the ground. CJ Card didn't have to do too much in the passing game, throwing for 136. The run game really controlled it for them. And so Notre Dame's my other winner of the day today. So that brings us to we have one more winner of the day, but we're going to combine this with our first loser of the day. So Vandy is our last winner of the day. Kevin, you want to get us started? We'll just kind of break this LSU Vandy game down if you want to get us started on it.
Yeah. So, the start of the game was, I think, positive for LSU from the standpoint. They came out and scored on their first possession for the first time this year. They looked like they could go down and get a touchdown, but they didn't. But they did get a field goal, and they moved the ball well in the first half. The disappointing thing to me in this game, from LSU's standpoint, was the approach that they came out in this game defensively. They blitzed Pavia a lot. They ran a lot of defensive line stunts a lot. And, Bama showed the blueprint a couple weeks ago on how you contain Pavia. And LSU played him that way last year. And that was set back, keep him in the pocket, play coverage, and make him beat you from the pocket. He had a great game today, 160 yards passing, 80 yards rushing, so 240 total. But those passing numbers are not going to beat you. But we let him get outside, and Perkins had a really rough day for LSU. That anytime they ran the option, they just go at him and bad angles and that kind of stuff. And then, I'll also say this: I thought Nussmeier fought really hard today. We've been critical of him, so I want to give him some credit for really competing today and trying to win. Trying to help bring his team and played hard. And then, you know, while the play calling was better again this week, you get into the fourth quarter and we just went back. It was like we were calling the game. We went away from the running game, and we showed the last 2 weeks when we try to be balanced in the drives and run the ball some, it helps our offense. Otherwise, the defense just turns everything loose, going at us. And we're not Eccles is not the best pass blocking lineman, even though, and then of course Davis the same thing. And then Chester got beat some in the fourth quarters. To me, just setting us in the pocket to throw the ball, you were just asking for trouble, and that's what we did in the fourth quarter. So, big win for Vandy, though. They executed well. They played well. They were the more physical team. They hit harder today. So give them credit. They were a winner. And then, LSU team that very disappointing. Their execution is still very lacking, and the defense didn't come to play today. So, Sweets, what you think about Vandy and LSU?
I just, I'll start off with the defense. That it was just a poor scheme by Blaine Baker or Baker today, Coach Baker. You like you said, Alabama gave you the blueprint. You've got to keep Pavia in the pocket because if you rush upfield, you're opening up lanes. He took advantage of. He had 86 yards on the ground and rushed for 2 touchdowns, and that was frankly the difference in the game. Vandy averaged 6.6 yards per carry. She averaged 3.9. Whose anemic run game is just, it's become a huge thorn in our side. Nuss played well today. He fought hard. He took some shots today, bounced back up and kept fighting. Just an overall rough performance today by LSU. I mean, the playoff hopes are over. We're not going to run the table. It's, we are who we are at this point. We're scoring 20 points a game. So if we hold you to less than that, we'll win. And if not, then we'll lose. What do you think, DMAC?
Yeah, so my thoughts on this game. Kudos to Vanderbilt for getting the job done at home. I have an unsung hero for Vanderbilt today. And that's Cole Spence, the number 2 tight end for them. 5 catches, 56 yards, 1 touchdown. But he made some incredible plays, both in the blocking game, and he had 1 phenomenal catch in this one. A few things with LSU, though. The pass protection was probably the worst that I've seen all season. Shout out to Nussmeier, though. 0 turnovers in this game, in a game where he was hit pretty often. So shout out to him. Tradez Green on the LSU side, finished with 5 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. Xavier Thomas, 4 catches, 75 yards. But LSU's got to do a better job. You can't let anybody run on you for 239 yards and win in the SEC. That's just not going to happen. So a huge lack of execution all the way around for the Tigers today, and all but ends their playoff hopes. Got a couple tough games coming on, and I was someone who early on in the season did not want to believe the ESPN FPI index. They had the Tigers at 7-5, and looking at the rest of the schedule, that may be a realistic outcome for LSU this year. So Vandy keeps their playoff hopes alive. At least one more week anyway. They looked pretty solid today. So that brings us to some other losers we have. I'll get things started here. Texas Tech loses on the road to Arizona State 26-22. They can still make the playoff, but I'm putting them in this category as a loser because now the Big 12 only gets one team in to the playoff. I still think that Texas Tech's the best team in this league. Starting quarterback misses pretty much the entire game for them. So Will Hammond for essentially 3 quarters, they could never really get the offense going. Cameron Dickey, the running back who just came off a 40-yard game last week, finished with 9 carries for 40 yards tonight. So shout out to the Arizona State defense for holding him in check. And then my next loser of the week is UNLV, a team that I picked to not only cover getting 9.5, I also picked them to win at Boise this week. And they lost the game 56-31. So this is probably my biggest loser of the season right here. UNLV needed to win every game this season to have a chance at the group of 5 spot in the playoff, and getting dominated on the road by Boise State. I talked about it's tough to win games in the SEC when you give up 200. Apparently it's tough in the Mountain West when you give up almost 300. So they gave up 560 yards of total offense today. Jalen Glover, though, did run the ball well for UNLV, 6 carries, 112 yards. They did have 261 yards total on the day. They just could not find the end zone today. So those are my 2 losers this week. Kevin, who do you have this week?
So I want to go with Memphis this week. We've talked about the American and how the non-power 4 team, good chance to come out of that league, and that would Memphis really hurt their chances today, losing on the road to UAB, a UAB team that had not won a conference game up until today, and they got their first conference win. They fired Trent Dilfer going into this game. Alex Mortensen, Chris Mortensen's son, is the interim coach there, and he gets a big upset, beating an undefeated Memphis team. Comes into this game 6-0, loses 31-24. Just a really bad loss for Memphis. And now again, they have to win out in a league that you've got South Florida, Navy, and some other teams that likely will finish ahead of them in the league. I mean, Memphis could win out. They still host South Florida. So if they win that game, that can be there. But this loss really hurt them today. So that would be my one loser of the weekend. Again, UAB would be one of the spoilers of this week. We've got a couple more we'll talk about in a minute. But I would throw UAB into that spoiler category with what they did to Memphis today. Steve, Sweet two you got for your loser of the week.
Well, since I picked them, I'm going to go ahead and take the Tennessee Vols as my loser of the week. And as we're speaking, my wife is texting me and said, "You jinxed us." Swear to God, that's the truth. If I pick you, you're in trouble. And Louisville was a great pick on Friday night, so I'm going to hang my hat on that one. Tennessee was an underdog on the road at Alabama, and teams just don't go into Alabama and win that often. So I'll take that loss. But it wasn't that they lost, it was the style that they lost in. Alabama physically dominated them. They just looked better the whole game. Bama's really coming to their own right now. And, Tennessee with that second loss is going to have to run the table to have any shot of making the playoff. They can do that. Their first loss against Georgia was one that they gifted. So Tennessee can do it, whether they do or not. It remains to be seen. One thing they're going to have to do, though, is they're going to have to toughen up on defense, because giving up 37 in the style that they did tonight, 30 of them, well, 28 of them were against the defense. They had a safety and a defensive touchdown, but they're just going to have to be better. Where are we going next, D-Mac?
Yeah, so let's go to our spoilers, and then there may be a game or two that ends in the next 5 minutes that we can throw into this. So I'll start with spoilers. I've got Minnesota here. I think a team that, Kevin, you picked them to win last night too, right?
Yeah, we both went on Minnesota and row your boat. We rowed the boat, and PJ rowed the boat like hell last night.
Yeah, so shout out to Minnesota. A question I've had for Dylan Raiola all season is, dude, when are you going to take charge and take over a game? And once again, it didn't happen. So huge rush game for Minnesota. Darius Taylor had 148 yards on the ground and 1 touchdown, and their defense really got after Raiola, sacked him 9 times in this one. So shout out to Minnesota, huge win to spoil any hopes that Nebraska had this year. We've got one more. You want to take this one, Kevin?
Yeah, so the other spoiler to me, again, you referenced Tech earlier as a winner. So the spoiler obviously would be Arizona State, and they really came to play today. They were up 19-7 in about a 2-minute period. Tech came back and took the lead, and then Sam Levitt led Arizona State down the field in the last few minutes, and there was like 30 seconds left on the clock when Tech got the ball back. So Levitt played really well, and a home game. So that, and where it's big is that also keeps Arizona State in the hunt for playing in the Big 12 championship game. So there's several teams at the top of that league now with one loss, with BYU and Utah still playing. With Utah, or BYU's ahead with by 10 right now. If they win that game, they'll be the only undefeated team in that league. But just a big win for Arizona State. So I would throw them into that spoiler group. And so from there. So, Sweets, you mentioned Tennessee still having a shot at the playoffs, and they do. You look at the schedules, there's a very good chance that Vandy and Tennessee could play each other the last game of the season, and both might only have 2 losses, with the winner of that game getting into the playoffs. Who would have thought that at the beginning of the season? I don't think really most people didn't give either team a shot at the playoffs this year, and the way that this is playing out. Vandy, I mean, we talked about them. They've done one, they play well, but they host Missouri, they host Auburn. These aren't in consecutive orders. They play Kentucky. They should win that game. They go on the road to Texas, which we hadn't talked about Texas, but Texas looked awful tonight, barely squeaking out a game against Kentucky. So Vandy could go on the road in Austin and win. If Vandy could win, they could be playing Tennessee with one loss, and who would have thought that that's possible? Just kind of that potential of that and that kind of stuff. We'll talk more about conferences tomorrow, but anyhow. So DMAC, what are your other thoughts as we sit here and wait on the Utah BYU game, and of course Auburn and Missouri just rolling into overtime too?
Yeah, this has been the Auburn Missouri game has been really kind of a defensive battle for both teams. I do think Jackson Arnold may be having the best game of the season. He's at 203 passing yards going into halftime. He's averaging 163 a game this season. So, really good game. The Auburn defense has really stepped up a bit. They've held going into halftime. Or going into overtime, Ahmad Hardy does have 2 touchdowns, but he's got 23 carries for 52 yards. In the ball about 2.2 yards per carry. So the number that sticks out to me right now most in this game is 38 carries for 73 yards for Missouri. A team that's really thrived on the run game. That's been their identity all season. So, definitely a few things affecting them after that loss to Alabama at home last week. Came out a little sluggish today. So we'll see soon if they can get this done. And then BYU's got a 10-point lead with about 2:50 left in this one.
Why you just went for it on 4th down and turned it over on downs. So Utah's getting the ball back with 2:45 left, but they got to go about 75 yards.
Okay, see, you're a little bit ahead of me here. I like that. I just saw that play happen here on. You probably watched that Texas Kentucky game. I don't think well, Texas won the game, but I wouldn't categorize that as moving into the winner's spot.
No.
Did anything stick out to you in that game?
I think the thing that stuck out to me is Texas offense after looking good in the second half last week against Oklahoma. Their offense regressed again and just looked really bad. Manning had a really tough outing, and we just watched here as Auburn took a sack and tried to attempt a 52-yard field goal in overtime and didn't make it. Missouri's going to have the ball, and all they're going to need is a field goal to pull this game out. This could be the end for Hugh Freeze. But going back to Texas, Manning was 12 out of 27 for 132 yards, 4-point average under 5 yards a pass attempt. And then rushing wise, Texas only had 47 yards rushing tonight. So just a really, really bad offensive outing. 179 total yards to Kentucky's 395. So how in the world did they win that game? Kentucky did have one turnover. But wow. And time of possession, Kentucky 39 minutes to Texas 20. That's just a wow on how in the world Texas was able to pull that game out on the road. But they did. But they certainly did not look very good. So even though Texas won, you almost have to put them in the loser category for the way that they played. It does not give it, with 2 losses already on the season. To me, it does not give that fan base hope that they're going to win out. They go on the road to Mississippi State next week. That game might go to Mississippi State. So anyhow, that was that. We got about 2 more plays here, I guess, and then if they don't get a first down, and then Missouri will be lining up to kick a field goal. It's going to be interesting to see how this game falls.
Yeah, we can also quickly talk the Florida Mississippi State game. I know I was tuned into that one. Mississippi State had a chance to win this one late. Florida wins at home 23-21 over Mississippi State. And State threw a late interception that a defensive lineman caught. But I was impressed with Devon Booth for Mississippi State today. Had 2 scores, 105 yards with Fluff Bothwell out right now. And then on the ground, Jaden Ball over at Florida ran for 150 and a score. The ability to force turnovers kept Mississippi State in this game too. They forced two interceptions from Lagway. Another good SEC game. Mississippi State's 0-3 in the SEC right now, but they've looked, in my opinion, pretty competitive. The A&M game wasn't super competitive, but they played Tennessee really good at home, then lose a close one to Florida. So I know you mentioned they're hosting Texas next week. With the struggles at Texas right now, this may be a game that Mississippi State can get. I know we'll really dive into that one on the Tuesday podcast. And I don't know if your TVs are ahead of mine, but I'm watching Missouri attempt a field goal right now, and it is no good.
Barely hooked.
Oh, no
Wow.
good. Going to double overtime in this one. And
I'm telling you, man, the Plains is a graveyard. Sometimes there's crazy things happen. That was a very makeable field goal. And he hit it good. He just missed it to the left. Almost right over the top. Wow.
Oh,
crazy, crazy.
Utah's got the ball on the 6 yard line with a minute 51 left, down 10.
Yeah, I just saw a pass interference in pretty much the end zone there.
One
Yeah,
other
that took him down.
team. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good.
One other team that we might have to talk about as a winner, and this is a team that I've not been high on, even though they only have one loss, and that's Oklahoma. They go on the road to South Carolina this weekend and really dominated that game, a game that I thought would be close, and I thought South Carolina might even be able to pull it off. And Oklahoma won 26-7. The reason that I call them a definite winner for them is they won this game playing different than they have all year. They've depended on Mateer to be their offense all year, and they took a lot of flack about not being able to run the ball and the way they lost that game last week, not being able to run the ball. Well, today they had 40 carries for 171 yards and was able to run the ball. Mateer only had 150 passing, so they did not depend on him at all. Blaylock had 100 yards rushing, and Xavier Robinson had 58. Both had a touchdown. So I would have to say you can throw them in there as one of the winners this week as we wait on kind of these other games to play out. Since we're on already, we might as well watch them.
Yeah, well, while we're talking Oklahoma, I want to mention, where is Jaden Ott? There was so much preseason hype about this guy coming in from Cal, and I think he's got 9 carries for 17 yards on this season. He has just been a non-factor. In our SEC fantasy football league, I think he was a third or fourth round pick by Hoko and DMAC. I don't know what those guys were thinking.
Might have even been a second round pick if I remember. In the snake going back definitely wasn't past the third. He was obviously a portal legend that turned out to not be maybe as good. His game did not elevate as he got into tougher competition.
Utah scored is
What's
24-21, and onside kick is coming up.
how much time's left?
Minute
About 20
24 with no timeouts.
Still time.
I mean,
If
it all comes down to this
BYU
kick. If they don't get
recovers
the
it,
onside kick, it doesn't matter. It's over. So we'll see what happens.
I tell you, it is crazy, this Missouri Auburn game. Because if you remember, it was about 3-4 years ago. Well, Sweets, it was the week before LSU won there in 22. Missouri goes in there and should have won that game and would have probably cost that coach's job then and didn't. That's and then certainly this game, if he makes that field goal, this would have been Freeze would have been done in the morning, and it's 3rd and
yeah.
10.
Utah recovered the kick.
There's
recovered the kick. Wait. They're saying a Utah player touched it before the 10 yards.
Yeah, we're gonna see a lot of coaching changes in the SEC this year.
We are.
We've already seen Arkansas. I would assume we'll see Florida here pretty soon. Likely gonna see Auburn this year.
Kentucky.
LSU's another one that, yeah, Kentucky. And then with those 5 jobs opening, who knows? There could be a couple SEC coaches who move to another SEC school this season or at the end of this season. You could realistically see 6 or 7 SEC job openings this cycle.
And what about? Don't forget about Beamer. Maybe going back to Vatek.
Yeah, this might be the most crazy SEC cycle there's been.
Beamer was a guy that coming into this season was, in lines to land something bigger and sitting at 3-4. I agree, Sweets. I think Vitek may be more something that he says, I may go back there. Because if he doesn't, he'll be on the hot seat next year, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Big third down completion for Missouri. Gets the ball down around the 12, and they run it on first down to about the 8-9 yard line. So second down, 6 or 7. That
So
went.
I know we're in the middle of football season, but there is some pretty big baseball news right now. A lot of rumors circling that Tony Vitello is going to be the next manager of the San Francisco Giants. So that's an interesting move to me. He's kind of the king of Knoxville, so to move on to the majors is, I don't want to say a shock by any means, because I don't necessarily think it's a lateral move, but an interesting move. And then even more interesting is I believe that every player on that team, it's too late to transfer into a new school to be eligible to play in the upcoming season, and kind of late to get a new coach too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Vols baseball team. Sweets, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. If combined with that loss to Alabama tonight, if it does, if it that does in fact turn out to be the case that Vitello did take the Giants job, Wes, it's going to be a rough week in Knoxville. A lot of college coaches have a pro itch. I mean, some guys are just college guys, and honestly, I don't know if Vitello's his rah fire him up attitude will convey to the professional game. I kind of looked at him as a college lifer, but Saban did the same thing. Spurrier did the same thing. And there were guys that had won titles like Vitello did. So, it could be one of those things where he just wants to, do it on the highest level, and being it's like we talked about with football, college football versus pro football. College baseball is a full-time job because he's constantly recruiting. He's recruiting his own players. It's a 365-day a year job, where professional baseball gets some time off in the off season. So, lot of different factors there on that decision. What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, I think it's a big coup for Buster Posey, for the Giants president to go in and have conversations with him a couple weeks ago. And if he lands this, Vitello is definitely a college guy, but I think he'll have success in the pros. Reason why I think he will, to me, he's a lot like Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson was really great with recognizing talent. And I just think Vitello's a baseball guy. And again, same thing. He is great with recognizing talent and a really good teacher of the game. So I think he'll do well out there with San Francisco. San Francisco has, good administration. So I think that he'll do well. I think he's a good coach. And now the question to me is, will he take Frank Anderson with him as a pitching coach that's been with him since there at Tennessee? Or where does Frank Anderson go? Does Tennessee, this late in the deal, does Tennessee say go to Frank Anderson to try to promote him? That to me is really tough scenario for Tennessee. So Missouri scores a touchdown. Looks like they may be lining up to go for 2.
I think you have
You
to in
have to,
double
don't you?
overtime
Yeah, I
now.
think you have to in the second overtime.
You may.
So BYU got a win over Utah 24-21. One more thing on the Tony Vitello stuff. If it is true and he's going to the pros, I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think he has success, but I would not be surprised to see him back in the SEC at another school in 3 or 4 years.
It's like I said earlier, some of those guys just have a pro itch. They want to scratch, and if he does make that jump to the Giants, he'll probably get a heck of a big contract. I'd be curious to the terms as far as years, though. If it's going to be we're trying to lock him down for 8-10 years, or if it's going to be something where he does have an out to get back to college if that's what he chooses to do. So it'll be interesting to see how that all pans out. What are your thoughts on that, Kev?
Yeah, like I said, I think he'll do well. I think once he gets in there, And if he's doing well, I don't see him coming back to college. Again, I think he's so much of a baseball guy, and if you're in a good organization like San Francisco over the years has been, I think he'll stay. Um, college coaches are your best college coaches make about 3 million a year. Your best managers in the pros make 7, 8 million. And again, that like you say, Sweets, they don't have to recruit. They don't have to re-recruit their players. They don't have to deal with the portal.
Yeah.
They just have to be baseball guys. They just have to go out, recognize talent, work with your scouts on what you need and kind of organize that and coach ball. And I think that's what he wants to do. So I think he'll do well, and I think that's where he'll be. You look at the
So
talent. Go ahead.
I was going to say then gun to your head, both you guys. Do you think he ends up at San Francisco or does he stay?
No, he ends up in San Francisco.
D
Yeah,
Mac.
I think so, but their last manager made 4 million at San Francisco. Let's say they pay him 5. 3 million in Knoxville, Tennessee goes a heck of a lot farther than 5 in San Francisco. I'll say that.
No, it does. San Francisco is one of the most expensive places to live, no doubt. He can live north of there though, and of course they may give him a housing allowance and stuff too.
Yeah.
4th and 8. It's the season is on the line for Mr. Freeze right here. Does Auburn have another cat to pull out of their bag? I wouldn't want to bet on Jackson Arnold converting a 4th and 8.
Well, I hope they do for you, Kev,
Yeah.
because you've been on them all year.
Holy shit. No, typical Jackson Arnold play. They got a flag down.
Flag down. Game's not over just yet.
It's going to be an ineligible receiver catching the pass with that lineman. Yeah, illegal touching.
Penalties declined. Zoo escapes the plains for a win, I guess. Yeah, win on the road. They say no win's easy in the SEC, especially on the road. So they find a way to get it done today. Any thoughts on this game from you guys?
Just a great win for Drink and Mizzou to go on the road and win that game. And like you mentioned earlier, Kev, they were snake bit there 3 years ago. So for them to go in and close it out today was that was a big hurdle to jump over. They did it, and they remain in the hunt.
Yep. Yeah, one loss to me. This throws them in the winner category, throws Auburn in the loser category. And again, I really don't see Freeze making it in the next weekend. It's another. How many close losses has he got now, D Mac? 1-score losses, and here's another one.
Yeah, so I think he's 2-13, 2-14 in SEC games now, decided by 1 score.
That was your call the other night, DMAC. That was a good call. That was a hell of a stat, and it came true today.
I know if I would only gamble on Hugh Freeze games, I'd have a lot more money after today.
If you faded me, you would too.
Auburn, so Florida's done this, and Auburn's definitely on this scenario right now. Sometimes, man, if you don't hire the right coach, you're running on the treadmill backwards, and you really set your program back. And again, Florida's been on this for 4 or 5 years, and Auburn since Malzahn, they should have never let him go. He had done as well there as anybody. But again, Sweet, you mentioned the other night, it's a toxic fan base. Since then, Harsin and Freeze, and now they've got to. This is going to unravel for them. They're probably going to fire him in the middle of the season. That's just how that fan base is. And if that happens, they're going to lose some players to the portal. They have some talent, so again, it'll set the program back 2 years from today just to get talent back in there. It's going to be really a tough scenario for them. And if they don't make a good hire, when you've got a lot of teams that are going to be hiring coaches, so, both of you said that. And so it's going to be the case. So Auburn has got to make a good hire. If not, they're going to put the program, they're going to they could easily go with a stretch of 7, 8 years where they don't play, don't win very many games.
I want to put something out there to both you guys, and we talked about it in our chat with the guys. Do you think that Auburn maybe goes in a different direction than the Scott Woodward 10-year 10 million a year thing? Do they maybe go 12 over 5 years or something like that, do teams start to lower the years and pay a little more to, to not be locked into these longer deals? Do you guys think that might be something on the horizon, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely think that you're going to see teams go to that. The only coaches that I think are going to have 8, 9, 10-year deals are going to be your Lane Kiffins. Obviously, Indiana did it with Signetti, Lanning, Kirby Smart. I think the rest of these guys that like are coming up, the Golishes, the Summeralls, the Eric Morrises, the guys that are coming up that are going to take the next step, they're going to get jobs that are going to be 5 years, 60 million, 5 years, 50 million. The $100 million years stuff is going to go away. And that's the only thing that's going to keep Kentucky from not firing Stoops is not just the $37 million buyout, but they owe that like in the 90 days. Yeah, that's going to be hard to stomach. So,
Yeah, I agree. And what I think you're going to see a lot of these programs do is there's not many coaches that are going to be hired in these vacant jobs that are going to get 7, 8, 9, 10 million a year. There's just not enough quality proven coaches. When I think of coaches who would potentially leave their school for an opening or one of the potential openings we've talked about, Lane Kiffin's a name. Then you can look at some other power schools. But if you bring, an Alex Golish or John Summerall up, there's no way if I'm Auburn or Arkansas, I'm giving them 9 or 10 million a year yet until they, you're probably looking at 5-year 30 million or 5-year 35 million, somewhere in the 6 or 7 range for some of these guys. I think you have a little bit of a reset coming up and with just the amount of coaches that are out there that you don't necessarily have to overpay some of these guys right now. I don't know what I think Alex Golish makes 2.5 at South Florida. Would he not jump at a 5-year, $28 million deal to go coach at Arkansas or somewhere? Sure he would. Why are you going to pay him, 5-year, 45 million when you can save 15, 19 million? So I think we're going to see a lot of that in this cycle. But yeah, you guys have anything else for tonight's?
It's been an
the only thing I
exhausting
would say
day.
is, and again, just from your side, it's been a great. You start with Friday night and today's games. A lot of good, competitive, close games. Another great week, which we knew it would be. Week 8 was like what we thought. We had some teams step forward, take lumps, and they're probably knocked out of the playoffs. But a great weekend of football. Week 9's coming up next.
Yep. So we'll do another recording tomorrow for everyone who listens to us, and we'll break down some conference outlook, and then we'll even do a little segment on some potential hot seats or coaches fired, and we'll dive in a little deeper on coaches who are ready to make that move up. So that's all we've got at Southern Sports Gumbo tonight. Great week of football. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys tomorrow, and we'll be live on Tuesday for our Week 9 preview and predictions.
Yes, sir.